The fluorescent lights in conference room B buzzed like dying insects, casting their sickly glow over what I thought would be the best day of my professional life. Instead, it became the day my world imploded with the casual cruelty of a paper shredder. "So, Mark," Karen said, her manicured fingers drumming against the mahogany table, "about that promotion we discussed." I straightened in my chair, feeling the familiar flutter of anticipation in my chest. After 12 years at Pinnacle Marketing, after countless late nights and sacrificed weekends, after building campaigns that had doubled our client retention rate, this moment had finally arrived. The corner office with the view of downtown Portland. The salary bump that would finally let us pay off the mortgage early. The respect I'd been chasing since my first day as a junior account executive. "I've been looking forward to this conversation," I said, allowing myself a small smile. The Peterson campaign results came in yesterday, and the clients thrilled. 40% increase in engagement, 28% boost in conversions. Karen's smile was sharp as a scalpel. "Yes, about that. Jake actually presented those numbers to the board. Impressive work." The words hit me like ice water. "Jake presented my work? Hoke, your work?" Karen tilted her head, her expression a masterpiece of manufactured confusion. "I think there might be some misunderstanding here, Mark. Jake's been leading the Peterson account for the past 6 weeks." The room seemed to tilt. Jake Turner sat across from me, his perfectly styled hair catching the harsh light, his expression a study in false sympathy. At 35, he had the kind of effortless confidence that came from never having to fight for anything in his life. Ivy League education, family connections, and the kind of smile that made clients trust him with their budgets, and apparently made my wife trust him with my career. "I'm sorry, Mark," Jake said, his voice dripping with mock sincerity. "I thought Karen had already talked to you about the transition. I know how attached you were to that account. Attached. Like I was a child clinging to a security blanket, instead of the architect of $1 million campaign." "The promotion," I said, my voice sounding strange and distant in my own ears. "We've been discussing my promotion to senior vice president for months." Karen's laugh was like breaking glass. "Oh, Mark, I think you misunderstood. The SVP position has been filled. Jake accepted it this morning." The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. Around the table, the other department heads studied their phones, their notebooks, anything but my face. Tina Morrison from HR cleared her throat and slid a manila folder across the table toward me. "We've prepared a generous severance package," Tina said, her voice carefully neutral. 12 weeks, plus benefits continuation. "We think it's time for you to explore new opportunities." The folder felt impossibly heavy in my hands. Severance package. New opportunities. Corporate euphemisms for, "You're fired, and we're giving your life to someone else." "This is insane," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I built this department, the Morrison account, the Peterson campaign, the entire digital strategy overhaul. That was me. That was my work." "Mark," Karen's voice carried a warning edge, "I think you're becoming emotional. Perhaps it's best if you take some time to process this." Emotional. The word every woman uses when she wants to dismiss a man's legitimate anger. Coming from Karen, it felt like a slap. I looked around the table at faces I'd known for years, colleagues I'd shared coffee with, worked late nights beside, celebrated victories with. Now they wouldn't meet my eyes. They'd already moved on, already accepted this new reality where Jake Turner wore my achievements like a stolen coat. 12 years, I said quietly. 12 years I've given this company. "And we appreciate that," Karen replied smoothly. "Which is why we're being so generous with the severance. Most companies wouldn't steal an employee's work and hand it to their replacement before firing them." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Karen's smile vanished, replaced by something cold and predatory. "I think we're done here," she said. "Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal items. Please have everything cleared out by 5 o'clock. Security. As if I were a criminal instead of a man who dedicated more than a decade of his life to building something that was now being handed to someone else like a party favor. I stood slowly, the severance folder clutched in my white-knuckled grip. "This isn't over." Jake's smile widened. "Actually, Mark, I think it is." The walk from conference room B to my desk felt like a death march. 23 steps through the open-plan office where I'd spent more waking hours than in my own home. Past the break room where I'd celebrated birthdays and promotions that now felt like elaborate jokes. past the copy machine that had witnessed 1,000 small victories and defeats. My desk looked exactly as I'd left it that morning. Coffee mugs still warm, Peterson campaign files spread across the surface, a framed photo of Karen and me from our anniversary dinner last month. She was smiling in the picture, her arm around my shoulders, looking for all the world like a woman who loved her husband, instead of one planning his professional execution. Wes Hoffman from IT appeared at my elbow like a ghost. At 44, Wes had the pale, slightly rumpled look of a man who spent his life in server rooms and database queries. He'd been my closest friend at Pinnacle, the one person who understood that behind every successful campaign was a mountain of technical wizardry that made the magic possible. Jesus, Mark, he whispered, glancing around nervously. I heard what happened. This is fucked up, even for Karen. I started pulling personal items from my desk drawers, a spare phone charger, a bottle of antacids, a small cactus Karen had given me for my birthday 2 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd said it was perfect for me because it was low maintenance and hard to kill. Did you know? I asked quietly. About Jake taking over Peterson? Wes shifted uncomfortably. I suspected something was up when he started requesting access to your project files. But I thought maybe you were collaborating or something. When? Started about 6 weeks ago. Small stuff at first. Just read access to some client databases. Then last week, he got full administrative privileges to your entire portfolio. 6 weeks. While I'd been working 16-hour days to perfect the Peterson presentation, Jake had been systematically gaining access to everything I'd built. While I'd been staying late at the office, missing dinners and weekend plans, he'd been positioning himself to steal my life's work. There's something else, Wes said, his voice dropping even lower. He palmed a small USB drive and slipped it into my jacket pocket. You didn't get this from me, but you need to know what's been happening. Before I could ask what he meant, Tina Morrison materialized beside us with 2 security guards in tow. The guards looked embarrassed. They'd known me for years, had chatted with me in the elevator, had shared the occasional joke about management. Now they were here to ensure I didn't steal office supplies or sabotage the copy machine. Ready, Mark? Tina asked with false brightness. I packed the last of my personal items into a cardboard box that had once held printer paper. 12 years of professional life reduced to a few pounds of knickknacks and a dying plant. The elevator ride to the parking garage was silent except for the mechanical wheeze of the building's aging ventilation system. The security guards flanked me like I was a flight risk, their presence a final humiliation in a day full of them. My car sat in spot 47, the same space I'd parked in every day for the past 5 years. The Honda Civic looked tired and ordinary, next to the BMWs and Mercedes that filled the executive spaces. Jake's new Audi was parked in the spot that should have been mine, its silver paint gleaming under the garage's harsh lights. I sat in my car for a long time after the security guards left, staring at the concrete walls and trying to process what had just happened. The USB drive in my pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Finally, I started the engine and drove home to the house I shared with the woman who had just destroyed my career. The house looked exactly the same as it had when I'd left that morning. Same red brick facade, same carefully maintained lawn, same cheerful yellow door that Karen had insisted would make the place feel more welcoming. Nothing had changed except everything. I found Karen in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner with mechanical precision. She'd changed out of her business suit into yoga pants and a sweater, transforming from corporate executioner back into the woman I'd married 15 years ago. The woman I'd loved, trusted, built a life with. "How was your day?" she asked, without looking up from her cutting board. The question was so absurd, so perfectly normal, that I almost laughed. "You fired me. I didn't fire you. The company made a strategic decision to restructure. You received a very generous severance package." She spoke like she was reading from a script, each word carefully chosen to minimize legal liability. Even in our own kitchen, she was still playing the corporate game. "You gave my job to Jake. Jake was the most qualified candidate for the position. Jake couldn't run a successful campaign if his life depended on it. The Peterson account was mine. The Morrison renewal was mine. The entire digital strategy overhaul was my concept, my execution, my success." Karen finally looked up from her vegetables, her expression cool and distant. "You're being dramatic, Mark. This is business, not personal. You're my wife. Everything you do to me is personal, and you're my employee. Everything I do at the office is business. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. Employee. Not partner, not equal, not the man who'd supported her climb up the corporate ladder. Just another subordinate to be managed and discarded when convenient. I went upstairs to my home office and closed the door. The room felt like a sanctuary, filled with my books and awards and the comfortable chaos of a creative mind at work. I powered up my laptop and inserted Wes's USB drive. What I found there changed everything. The files on Wes's USB drive painted a picture of betrayal so systematic and thorough that it took my breath away. Email threads, calendar entries, file access logs, and security footage timestamps, all documenting a conspiracy that had been months in the making. The earliest email was dated 4 months ago, a message from Jake to Karen, with the subject line, Strategic Realignment Discussion. Karen, per our conversation yesterday, I've been thinking about the leadership structure in the marketing department. Mark's done good work over the years, but I think we both know he's reached his ceiling. The Peterson account would be a perfect opportunity to demonstrate more dynamic leadership. Let me know when you want to discuss transition strategies. Jay. Karen's response was immediate and chilling. Jake, I appreciate your initiative on this. Mark has become comfortable, perhaps too comfortable. A change might benefit everyone involved. Let's schedule a private meeting to discuss specifics. And Jake, let's keep this between us for now. No need to create unnecessary anxiety. I scrolled through months of similar exchanges, watching my professional death sentence being written in corporate doublespeak. They discussed transition strategies and leadership optimization and resource reallocation, euphemisms for stealing my work and destroying my career. But it wasn't just professional. The emails grew increasingly personal as the weeks passed. References to drinks after work, weekend meetings, shared jokes about my old-fashioned approach to client relations. By last month, the tone had shifted to something that made my stomach turn. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. You're incredible. Jay. Likewise. Mark's working late again tonight. My place at 8? K. Wouldn't miss it. Jay. The timestamps showed a pattern. Every late night I'd spent at the office. Every weekend I'd sacrificed to perfect a campaign. Every moment I'd been building what I thought was our future. They'd been together. In our home. In our bed. No-go. The file access logs told the technical story. Jake had been systematically copying my work for months, gaining access to client files, strategic documents, and campaign materials. Everything I'd created, he'd stolen. Every innovation I'd developed, he'd claimed as his own. The security footage timestamps were the final nail in the coffin. Jake's car in our driveway on afternoons when I was at client meetings. His arrival and departure times perfectly coordinated with my schedule. They'd turned my own work ethic against me, using my dedication as cover for their betrayal. I sat back in my chair, feeling like I'd been punched in the chest. The woman I'd loved for 15 years, the career I'd built over 12 years, the life I'd thought was mine. All of it had been systematically dismantled by two people I'd trusted completely. My phone buzzed with a text message from my friend Dave Richardson. Heard what happened at work. That's rough, man. Want to grab a beer and talk about it? Dave had been my friend since college. We'd been groomsmen at each other's weddings, had supported each other through career changes and family crises. If anyone would understand what I was going through, it would be Dave. I texted back. Yeah, I could use a friendly ear. Murphy's Pub at 7, and see you there. Murphy's Pub was a dive bar 3 blocks from my house. The kind of place where the beer was cheap and the bartender minded her own business. Darla Mackenzie had been serving drinks there for 20 years, and she had the kind of weathered wisdom that came from listening to other people's problems, night after night. I arrived early and claimed a corner booth, ordering a whiskey neat and trying to organize my thoughts. How do you explain to someone that your entire life has been revealed as an elaborate lie? Dave showed up 15 minutes late, which was typical for him. At 42, he had the soft look of middle management and suburban comfort, a little thicker around the middle than he'd been in college, but still recognizably the guy who'd helped me move furniture and loaned me money when I was between jobs. Jesus, Mark, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. Karen really did a number on you, huh? Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. There was no surprise in his voice, no shock at the sudden reversal of my fortunes, just a kind of weary resignation, like he'd been expecting this conversation for a while. You knew, I said. Dave signaled Darla for a beer and avoided my eyes. I suspected something was up. How long? Mark, come on, don't make this harder than it has to be. How long, Dave? He sighed and took a long pull from his beer. A few months, maybe longer. Sarah saw them together at that new Italian place downtown. She wanted to tell you, but I thought maybe it was just a business dinner or something. Sarah was Dave's wife, a woman I'd known almost as long as I'd known Dave. She'd seen my wife with another man and said nothing. They'd all known, and they'd all decided I was better off living in ignorance. Who else knows? Mark, who else knows? Dave's shoulders sagged. Most people, I think. It wasn't exactly subtle. Jake's been bragging about the promotion for weeks. And the other thing, well, Karen's not as discreet as she thinks she is. And the other thing, my wife's affair had become office gossip, water cooler entertainment, a joke everyone was in on except me. Why didn't you tell me? What was I supposed to say? Hey, Mark, your wife's screwing your coworker and planning to destroy your career? You would have shot the messenger. Maybe he was right. Maybe I would have refused to believe it, would have accused him of jealousy or spite. Maybe I would have chosen comfortable lies over ugly truths. But that didn't make his silence any less of a betrayal. I need another drink, I said. I walked to the bar, leaving Dave in the booth with his beer and his guilty conscience. Darla was polishing glasses with the methodical rhythm of someone who'd done the same task 10,000 times. Rough day? She asked, pouring whiskey without being asked. Rough life. She nodded knowingly. Heard through the grapevine that you got canned. That's tough. The grapevine. Honey, this is a small town. Word travels fast, especially when it involves someone as high profile as your wife. Karen's been in here a few times with that pretty boy from your office. Real cozy, if you know what I mean. Even the bartender knew. Everyone knew except the one person who should have known first. They come in here often? Darla glanced around the bar, making sure no one was listening. Every Thursday for the past 2 months. Always the same booth. Always the same routine. He pays. She laughs at his jokes. They leave together. Not exactly subtle. Thursday nights. My standing racquetball game with Dave. The one night of the week I was guaranteed to be out of the house for 3 hours. They'd even turned my friendship into a tool for their deception. I looked back at the booth where Dave sat nursing his beer and checking his phone. My oldest friend, my closest confidant, my racquetball partner who'd been providing them with the perfect alibi every week. Dave, I called out, we need to talk. He looked up from his phone with the expression of a man who'd been dreading this moment for months. You knew about Thursday nights, I said, sliding back into the booth. The racquetball games. You knew they were using our standing date as cover. Mark, I swear I didn't know about that specifically. I just thought, you thought what? That it was a coincidence? That they just happened to schedule their affair around my weekly absence? Dave's face flushed red. Look, I'm sorry, okay? I should have said something. But what good would it have done? You were happy. You thought you were getting promoted. I didn't want to be the one to destroy all that. So you let them destroy it instead. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, and the sound was bitter even to my own ears. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been my best friend telling me that my wife was cheating on me. Fair would have been someone warning me that I was about to lose my job. Fair would have been not spending 2 months playing racquetball while my life fell apart. Dave stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You know what, Mark? Maybe this is why it happened. Maybe this is why Karen went looking for someone else. You've always been so focused on what's fair, what you deserve, what you're owed. Maybe she got tired of being married to someone who thinks the world revolves around him. The words hit like a physical blow. This was my best friend, the man who'd been my best man, telling me that I deserved what had happened to me. Get out, I said quietly. Mark, get out, now. Dave threw a 20 on the table and walked away, leaving me alone with my whiskey and the wreckage of another relationship. First my marriage, then my career, now my oldest friendship. The demolition was thorough and efficient. I sat in that booth for another hour, nursing my drink and watching the other patrons live their uncomplicated lives. A young couple sharing nachos and laughing at each other's jokes. An old man reading a newspaper and occasionally commenting to the bartender about the sports scores. People whose wives weren't cheating on them, whose friends weren't lying to them, whose entire existence wasn't built on a foundation of deception. When I finally went home, Karen was already in bed, reading a magazine like it was any other night. Like she hadn't destroyed my career that morning, like she hadn't been betraying me for months, like she hadn't just lost me my best friend along with everything else. How was your evening? She asked without looking up. Educational. She turned a page in her magazine, and I noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay in bed next to the woman who'd betrayed me, listening to her breathe and planning my revenge. The USB drive sat in my nightstand drawer like a loaded gun, full of evidence that could destroy both their careers and their reputations. But I didn't want quick satisfaction. I wanted them to feel what I'd felt. The slow realization that everything they'd built was crumbling. The growing awareness that people they'd trusted were working against them. The final devastating moment when they understood that their entire world was a lie. I wanted them to suffer the way I was suffering. The next morning, Karen left for work without saying goodbye. She'd already moved on, already started living her new life, where I was just an inconvenient memory to be managed and minimized. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner, then got to work. Step 1 was reconnaissance. I needed to understand their routines, their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities. The emails on Wes's drive had given me a roadmap, but I needed current intelligence. I drove to Jake's apartment complex, a trendy high-rise downtown that catered to young professionals with more money than sense. His silver Audi was in the parking garage, which meant he was either still asleep or working from home. I found a coffee shop across the street with a clear view of the building's entrance and settled in to wait. Jake emerged at 10:30, dressed in the kind of expensive casual wear that was meant to look effortless, but probably cost more than my car payment. He walked with the confident swagger of a man who'd just stolen someone's life and felt good about it. I followed him at a distance as he made his way through downtown Portland. First stop was an upscale men's clothing store, where he spent 40 minutes trying on suits that cost more than most people made in a month. Then a jewelry store, where he examined engagement rings with the focused attention of a man making serious plans. Engagement rings. He was planning to propose to my wife while our divorce wasn't even filed yet. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Brian Walsh from Cascade Marketing. Heard you might be looking for new opportunities. Coffee this afternoon?" Brian Walsh. I remembered him from industry conferences. Smart, ambitious, running a boutique firm that competed directly with Pinnacle for mid-level accounts. We'd always had a good professional relationship, the kind of mutual respect that develops between people who understand each other's work. I texted back, "Absolutely. When and where?" "Stumptown Coffee on Division, 3 p.m.? See you there." This was interesting. Word of my firing had already reached the competition, which meant either the industry was smaller than I'd thought, or someone was actively spreading the news. Either way, it represented an opportunity. I spent the rest of the morning following Jake's routine, learning his patterns and habits. Lunch at an expensive bistro, where he met with 3 clients I recognized from Pinnacle's portfolio. A stop at the bank, then the gym, then back to his apartment. A man living his best life on the foundation of my stolen work. Brian was already waiting when I arrived at Stumptown, a cup of coffee cooling in front of him as he scrolled through his phone. At 38, he had the lean, focused look of an entrepreneur who'd built something from nothing and wasn't done building yet. "Mark," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Thanks for meeting on short notice. Thanks for reaching out. I have to admit, I'm curious how you heard about my situation so quickly." "Moan." Brian smiled. "Portland's marketing community is smaller than you'd think. Plus, I've been keeping an eye on Pinnacle's client roster. When I heard they'd made some personnel changes, I thought it might create some opportunities." We talked for an hour about the industry, about Cascade's growth plans, about the kind of work that excited us both. Brian was building something impressive, a firm that combined the personal attention of a boutique agency with the strategic sophistication of a major player. "I'll be direct," Brian said finally. "I've been following your work for years. The Morrison campaign was brilliant, and what you did with Peterson's digital transformation was exactly the kind of thinking we need here. I can't match your old salary immediately, but I can offer you equity, creative control, and the chance to build something that's actually yours." "What about non-compete clauses?" "Already had our lawyers look at your Pinnacle contract. It's standard boilerplate, unenforceable in Oregon for anything beyond direct client poaching. You're free to work wherever you want." The offer was good. Better than good. It was a chance to start over, to build something new, to prove that my success at Pinnacle hadn't been an accident or a fluke, but more importantly, it was a weapon. "I'm interested," I said. "Very interested. But I need to be transparent about something. I'm going through a difficult divorce, and my ex-wife still works at Pinnacle. Things could get complicated." Brian's smile widened. "Complicated how?" "Let's just say I have some insights into Pinnacle's strategic plans that might be valuable to a competitor. Insights that were obtained legally? Absolutely. I helped develop most of their current strategy. It's all in my head. We shook hands on a preliminary agreement. I would start at Cascade the following Monday as a senior strategy director, with a focus on acquiring mid-level accounts that valued innovation over corporate bureaucracy, accounts exactly like the ones Jake was now mismanaging at Pinnacle. That evening, I started phase 2 of my plan. I created a series of anonymous social media accounts using a VPN and untraceable email addresses. Then I began documenting Jake and Karen's affair with the methodical precision of an investigative journalist. Photos of them entering restaurants together. Screenshots of their social media posts that revealed coordinated activities. Public records showing Jake's recent apartment lease and Karen's credit card statements from our joint account. Statements that showed charges at restaurants and hotels I'd never been to. I didn't publish anything yet. I just collected evidence, building a comprehensive dossier of their relationship that would be impossible to deny or explain away. The next morning brought a text from Jake. "Hey Mark, heard you landed on your feet at Cascade. No hard feelings about the Pinnacle situation, right? Maybe we can grab a beer sometime and talk about old times." The casual arrogance of it was breathtaking. He'd stolen my job, my wife, and my life. And now he wanted to grab a beer and reminisce about old times. I texted back. "Sure, Jake, I'd love to catch up. Murphy's Pub tonight at 8? Perfect. Looking forward to it." Murphy's Pub felt different that night. Instead of being a refuge from my problems, it was now the stage for my revenge. I arrived early and chose the same corner booth where Dave had delivered his devastating betrayal 2 nights before. Jake showed up precisely on time, dressed in designer jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. He moved through the bar like he owned it, nodding to other patrons and flashing his perfect smile at Darla behind the bar. "Mark," he said, sliding into the booth with theatrical enthusiasm. "You look good, man. Unemployment suits you." "Thanks. You look good too. Success suits you." He ordered an expensive craft beer and launched into a monologue about his new responsibilities at Pinnacle, his plans for expanding the client base, his vision for the department's future. Everything he described was based on strategies I'd developed, innovations I'd pioneered, relationships I'd built. "The Peterson account is really taking off," he said. "I've got some ideas for expanding their digital presence that I think you'd appreciate." "I'm sure I would. Tell me about them." For the next 20 minutes, Jake described my own ideas back to me, presenting them as his own innovations with the confidence of a man who'd convinced himself that theft was just good business sense. "That's fascinating," I said when he finished. "Really innovative thinking." "Thanks. I've always been good at seeing the big picture, you know? Sometimes I think that's what separates good marketers from great ones. The ability to synthesize different elements into a cohesive strategy. The ability to steal other people's work and present it as your own," he meant. "Speaking of big pictures," I said, "how are things with Karen?" Jake's smile flickered for just a moment. "Karen's great. She's been really supportive during the transition." "I bet she has. You two seem to work well together." "We do. We really do. There's a synergy there, you know? A shared vision for where the company should go. A shared vision that involved destroying my career and stealing my wife." "That's wonderful," I said. "It's so important to have that kind of partnership, especially in a leadership role." Jake leaned forward, his expression becoming more serious. "Look, Mark, I want you to know that what happened at Pinnacle wasn't personal. It was just business. Sometimes companies need to make hard decisions. I understand completely. No hard feelings. Really. Really. In fact, I'm grateful. If you hadn't taken my job, I never would have ended up at Cascade. And I have to tell you, the opportunities there are incredible." Jake's expression shifted slightly, curiosity mixing with concern. "What kind of opportunities?" "Oh, you know, new clients, new challenges. Brian Walsh has some really interesting ideas about market expansion." "Brian Walsh? My new boss. Great guy. Very aggressive about pursuing new business. He's particularly interested in accounts that might be underserved by their current agencies." I could see the wheels turning in Jake's head. He knew exactly which accounts I was talking about. The same accounts he was now responsible for managing. "Well," he said carefully, "I'm sure you'll do great things there." "I'm sure I will. Thanks for the vote of confidence." We finished our drinks making small talk about the industry, about mutual acquaintances, about everything except the elephant in the room. Jake paid the check with a credit card that had his name embossed in gold letters, another symbol of his newfound success. "We should do this again sometime," he said as we prepared to leave. "Absolutely. I'll be in touch." I watched him walk to his Audi, his shoulders straight and his step confident. He had no idea that he'd just given me everything I needed to destroy him. The next morning, I started making phone calls. Monday morning at Cascade Marketing felt like stepping into a parallel universe where competence was rewarded and innovation was encouraged. The office occupied 2 floors of a converted warehouse in southeast Portland, with exposed brick walls, high ceilings, and the kind of creative energy that comes from people who genuinely love their work. Brian introduced me to the team, 12 talented professionals who'd chosen to work at a smaller firm because they wanted to build something meaningful rather than just collect paychecks. Within an hour, I was in a conference room with 3 potential clients, discussing strategies that would have taken weeks to approve at Pinnacle. "The key is authentic engagement," I explained to the CEO of a local tech startup. "Your customers don't want to be sold to, they want to be part of a community. We can build that community around your brand, but only if we're genuine about the value you're providing." The CEO nodded enthusiastically. "That's exactly what we've been looking for. Our current agency keeps pushing traditional advertising approaches that feel completely wrong for our demographic." "Who's your current agency?" Brian asked, though I suspected he already knew the answer. "Pinnacle Marketing. They assigned us to some hotshot named Jake Turner. But honestly, his ideas feel like they're from 10 years ago." I exchanged a look with Brian. This was almost too easy. "Well," I said carefully, "we'd love the opportunity to show you what modern marketing looks like. By